Judy's phone and Elisa Hoffman. Hi, Lisa. Julian. Very nice. Hi, Alyssa.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm cooking dinner, so I don't want you to see me.
Okay.
What's for dinner?
Nothing good. Chicken. But no, chicken good. But, and I also just came in from walking for an hour, so.
Wow,
Nice.
that's nice. It's beautiful.
Sweaty and cooking. What can I say? Hi, Julian. Remember me, the lady from Shalom?
Julian, how are you?
Oh, hi. Thank you. How are you, Rabbi? I can't see you.
No, we don't see the rabbi yet.
Oh,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Julian.
hi, Alyssa.
Wait a minute. I'm going on for 1 second to say hello to you because we saw each other recently. How are you?
Okay, thanks. Hi.
Good. So
Wow. That's
how
so
fabulous.
nice.
time to go.
Hopefully we'll radiate commissions.
Guys, open your cameras. Come and let us see you. Hi, guys. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Rabbi.
How's it going? Nice. Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Evelyn
Hi,
Croft.
Carol.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, sweetheart. Oh, I'm so glad you're here.
You might drink.
It's a great topic.
What's the topic?
Whatever you make it.
Exactly. I got nervous there. I was like, did they give out a topic without me knowing? Okay, tonight's topic, good evening, everyone. We're going to study headlines, halachic debates on current events. Okay, so we're going to start with a relatively simple, very common issue. And I'll start with the example that we currently have. You may notice that at L'Chaim Center, we have a Roomba. And at L'Chaim Center, we don't necessarily have, it's complicated, our internet at L'Chaim Center. It's pretty complicated. We don't have, so the Roomba works of internet, of Wi-Fi. And so if you have a computer, we can use Xfinity Wi-Fi at the L'Chaim Center. That is, we have a subscription and we can use it that way. If you don't have Xfinity Wi-Fi, there is other Wi-Fi that is in the system, that is in the air, floating around the air. And that primarily comes from the dentist office, our neighbors. And our question is, are we able to log into our neighbor's dentist, our neighbor's Wi-Fi in order to use it for our Roomba without their permission? Okay, this is a common question that should show up relatively often. For example, one needs to get some work done. One stops outside a Starbucks and there's free Wi-Fi out there. Can one use the Wi-Fi without being a client? Clearly they're offering the Wi-Fi for clients. Can you use the Wi-Fi without their permission, without offering them going and buying a drink from them? You give me other examples of where there's Wi-Fi that one can harness and that question shows up. Any ideas, suggestions?
In a restaurant, sometimes you can use their Wi-Fi. That's like Starbucks, though, I guess.
Right.
Well, you need their, like the dentist's office, you have to have their password, or they don't have a password and it's open to anybody for access, but there has to be permission through a password.
Right. So Carol's asking, putting out a very simple question, a very simple point. is that you need a password. So if you put a password on, then it's clearly showing that they want you to, that you need to get the password in order to use it. Or, and if someone does not have the password, then they are saying, hey, this is available for everyone. Is that correct? Everyone agrees that if someone does not put a password on their Wi-Fi, you can use the Wi-Fi.
Rabbi, are you
Like
saying that
that's-
you're going to change the format, or can we use this for the future? Just go on Zoom without a Wi-Fi. Are you going to change it, or?
No.
Okay, because I was worried about that.
No, I was saying we do have, it's called Xfinity Wi-Fi, which is, we can access it through our a computer. But I'm saying for the Roomba, we needed the
Yeah,
dentist.
so Rabbi, it doesn't seem like the password should be the criteria for
Because the
for
link
allowing
is
you
not
to
been-
take. It'd be like saying my home is open because I didn't lock it. So, come on in and take something because I didn't lock it. It doesn't seem like that's the right criteria.
It's not costing them any money either.
But is it
Also,
right?
doesn't seem like the right criteria.
Let's ask a question. So what do you mean by it's not costing them any money?
For you to use their Wi-Fi.
How
But
many?
on the other hand,
You're,
On the
you're,
other
you're
hand-
saying it's not an incremental cost, but the fully loaded cost, or the, if you get into cost accounting here, they're expending a certain amount of money for the purpose of providing a service to their customers.
The
So
Wi-Fi
there
is
could be no
not-
incremental cost, or it could slow, everyone jumps on it, slows down, and makes it a worse experience
okay.
for their own
That's a good point.
customers.
But there's one other thing. What about asking them?
No, we're talking about not asking. This is our subject tonight is, do you need to ask specifically with regards to Wi-Fi? That's a specific discussion for tonight's evening. Yes, we can go and ask them for permission, and they can either give us permission or say no. The question is, do you need permission? And if you don't have permission, are you allowed to use it without their permission? Is there a prohibition with regards to using the Wi-Fi of a company? Okay. Now, Len, why do you think that a password is not a defining expression of whether a person is giving ownership or not?
Because securing your stuff doesn't seem to be the criteria by which a person taking your stuff that should be judged. I have a field full of wheat and I don't put a fence around it. Come on in. It's open. It's open season. Just come and take what you want. That can't be right.
It can't be right. Alyssa, I like
It cannot be right.
I understand.
I think there's an unspoken agreement, like when you're in the airport and they say it's free Wi-Fi, that means you're going to be taking a plane somewhere. So I think that if there's, I mean, might I use someone's Wi-Fi if I got connected automatically? Yes, I might, because I'm not as virtuous as maybe I should aspire to be. But I think that when there's no password, there's an unspoken agreement that you are a patron, that you are giving something back in some way.
So what I do want to say is, I want to say is that I definitely think that that had we had this conversation 5 or 8 years ago, I don't think that we would be arguing that having a password on your Wi-Fi or not having a password on your Wi-Fi would be an expression of an agreement to giving people permission to use their Wi-Fi. And the reason why is because I think 5 or 8 years ago, many people did not know how to put passwords on their Wi-Fi, and it was not a common I mean, I wouldn't say it's not a common thing to have a password on one's Wi-Fi as much as you could often find people who just installed, who got the box, plugged it in, and were told it's just going to run, and didn't want to have a password on the Wi-Fi, didn't install a password on the Wi-Fi because they were worried that they would forget the password. Who remembers the password on the Wi-Fi? I don't know the password on my Wi-Fi, in our Wi-Fi at home, right? People, so we primarily people are putting passwords on the Wi-Fi, not so much to stop other people from using their Wi-Fi, but for what? Why would a person put a password on the Wi-Fi?
If I may, some
Yeah.
of this comes to rather unethical debate, and depending on, I'd say, the ethical precepts of the society will depend on your perspective. Like, for an example, Lao Tzu would have a different perspective on Wi-Fi than Machiavelli. Machiavelli would probably go with the understanding that if you're going to be using Wi-Fi, you should also support the business, whereas Lao Tzu might go with the understanding that some things are community driven. For an example, if you had a visitor in a city, can they not rely on the police if something happens, even though they are not a citizen of the city? So in that respect, if somebody's not going to put Wi-Fi on their system, they're saying that they invite people to participate in their Wi-Fi, and they share it. But neither of these are, well, Rambam. We're not talking about Jewish philosophy. We're talking about, philosophical rhetoric of the ages. And, part of the point of this conversation is to try to understand and discover, like, if this were a question put in the Talmud, what would Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai actually say?
That's our goal. Our goal is to get there, right? Okay, so and that was Evelyn, is that right?
Yes, sorry.
No, I was just trying to work out. So our goal is, first we wanted to just discuss it out and discuss the question and throw it out, and then we're going to look at some sources. So that's really our goal behind the classes, that these headlines classes. What we're trying to do is we're discuss a common moral ethical challenge and debate it a little bit, hear different sides, and then try and see if we can pull that into practical, see where we can look at some resources and bring some halachic rulings from that with that regard. But I like that perspective of, are we from a communal based perspective that people have responsibilities towards the community, or is it a very self-centered base that I own my property, you own your property, you're not able to use mine, I'm not able to use yours? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Rabbi, first of all, I don't think any company like Starbucks would care if you use their Wi-Fi sitting outside away from their tables. I think of Shabbos too. In Shabbos, you're not supposed to pick up a pen because you might use it to write. Okay, and maybe Starbucks is thinking that if they give you this service and you appreciate it, that where are you going to get your coffee? You're going to get it from Starbucks. I don't. It's very complicated in my mind, and I don't know anything about Wi-Fi.
So,
Sorry.
so one thing that I do want to point out, I mean, Wi-Fi is not like physical property, right? Len, give me a good word for how would we define the Wi-Fi, what it is. It's not intellectual property, right? It's I would call it a highway. Right? The internet is basically a highway. It's a resource. It's an access point. Let's call it an access point, right? I'll call it an access point. And I wonder if I actually have not looked up a resource, but it's so simple, so simple. If I have a field and there's a path and people walk through the field, do people have a right to continue walking through the field? Do people have a right to walk through a field that is private and there's a path through the field?
That's actually a very interesting discussion that was brought up very often when I was growing up, with respect to walking to synagogue. So very often you would try to take shortcuts because the community I lived in did not have a grid-based road structure.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, ultimately you discovered whether there was permission given. And when permission was given, it was generally given to the entire community, not just to individuals. And when it was not given, you simply found other pathways. I had thought of a caveat, if I may. I'm sorry. You simplified the comment that I had made earlier with respect to communal versus private. And, that's not to say that there shouldn't be any private borders, but rather password protection initiates that private border. Whereas if you don't have that, then it doesn't initiate that border. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying that everything is communal, but that people are allowed to, and possibly even encouraged to, to share when they can. Sharing should be encouraged.
Okay, so let's look at some sources, okay?
Yes.
Let's look at some sources. First, I want to start with the concept of using someone else's property without their permission. Are you allowed to use someone else's property without the permission? So for example, let's just start with the simplest example would be if one walked into a synagogue and I forgot my talis. So usually in a synagogue, there are talisim that are available that one could use. If you can't find any talisim in the synagogue, and you open up the cupboard where you're sitting at, where you chose to sit, and lo and behold, there is a talis over there. May one use the talis that is before you or not? So this is a Gemara. The Gemara talks about, it's called a shoel shelo midat, someone who borrows something without permission. Okay, someone who borrows something without another person's permission. There are different categories. Okay, well, someone who borrows something without someone else's permission, specifically with regards to a mitzvah. The Gemara comes out and says, the Talmud comes out halachically ruling that unless a person clearly says, I do not give anyone else permission to use my property, you're allowed to use as long as there's not going to be a decline in the value, one's allowed to use that property without the person's permission if it is going to be used for a mitzvah. Okay, a shoel shelo midat, borrowing someone's possession without their permission, as long as you're not going to destroy it significantly, you're allowed to use it for a mitzvah. Okay. However, with regards to Something that is not a mitzvah, what is that categorized? Something that is not a mitzvah, how do you categorize that? And that is going to be the first source that we're going to see. The Talmud says that someone who borrows something without permission is considered a ganav. A ganav is a thief. Okay, so let's just first categorize the different responsibilities of people who have other people's possessions, properties, or possessions in their property. So for example, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 categories of people who can have someone else's possession in their property. The first is called a shomer chinam, someone who guards something for free. So for example, I asked you, it happened to me in Israel, I was praying in what's called a shtiblach. Shtiblach is like, there are many, many minions going on, and there's a lot of activity, and there's stuff going on, and things are happening. And I was praying, a guy walked in, he wanted to put down his tefillin and then go to the mikveh and then come back. So I'm sitting at a table, he comes with his beautiful tefillin bag, talis and tefillin bag, and he puts it in front of me, says, shomer chinam. And I went, carried on davening. And basically what he said is, you are guarding my property. I'm giving you the responsibility to guard my property for free. I'm not paying you, but you have an obligation to guard my property. Do you accept? So I said, sure, right? I accept it. Now, so shomer chinam, someone who's a guard for free versus someone who guards, who watches something for pay, for money, has different obligations. So for example, we call it, the first is pshia. If I'm negligent with regards to someone else's property, I'm responsible. Meaning if I'm negligent, he asked me to look after his tefillin bag, and I went for a walk and someone stole the tefillin bag, that's my responsibility. I'm obligated to refund, repay the value of the tefillin bag. Gneva, if someone comes and steals it in front of me, like without my control, I'm not obligated to over the property. Aveda, if it gets lost, meaning they move things around and it suddenly got lost, I'm not obligated to, I'm not chayav on that. And ones, if a massive, if something happened that was out of anyone's control, for example, a storm came and just destroyed all the property, it's not my responsibility. Okay, that's called a shomer chinam. Then we have a shomer sachar. A shomer sachar is someone who guards for pay. So shomer sachar, he has the obligation with regards to pshia. If it gets stolen, it's his responsibility. If it gets lost, it's his responsibility. However, if it's out of his control, you can't come and claim and say, well, I paid you to guard this. And because it got burnt in a fire that was out of your control, you have to pay me back. It's not a person's responsibility. With the shomer sachar, you're free. Then we have a socher. Socher is someone who hires something from someone else. So until now, someone was giving me their object, their possession to look after, right? So either he's asking me to look after it for free, or they're paying me to look after. Now I need to borrow someone's hammer. He said, well, it's a really precious hammer. So I say, can I borrow it from you? Okay, so if I borrow it, then I'm taking it for my own personal use. I have more responsibilities with regards to the object. It's not he's asking me, I'm asking him that I hold on to the property. And a shoel is chayav in everything. He's responsible for everything. Even if a fire comes and burns down the house, since you borrowed it for your own personal use, you have the responsibility to pay back. And so is a ganav. So if someone steals someone else's property, you have all the obligations with it of returning the object either as it is, or if it got destroyed, you have to return the object as it is. Okay, so those are 5 categories. Any questions so far? It makes sense? Yes? Okay, so let me just explain why I'm going, where we're going with this. The Gemara says, the Talmud says that if a person borrows something without another person's knowledge, one of the opinions are that it's as if you have stolen. It's considered thievery. So now the question is it considered thievery from the perspective of you've done an avera, you've done one has sinned, or is it thievery from the perspective of you have the obligations of the thief, meaning if something gets damaged to it, you are obligated to pay. Does that make sense? And that is going to be source number one. Give me a second, share my screen.
I do actually have a question, but although it's on topic, it relates more to what you discussed much earlier. And that is,
Can I ask you, baby, can you put it in the chat box? And
yes, absolutely.
Let's put it in the chat box. And then let's just go. I just want to move through and I lose track of time. So I want to pull out this resource. Wrong page. There we go. Okay. I'm right over here. Borrowing without permission. At first glance, the halachic status of using items without permission is addressed by a statement of Rabbi in Baba Metzia, where it says, Rabbi said, one who borrows without permission has the status of a thief, a gazlan, according to the rabbis. So one would initially think that if you're using someone else's property without their permission, you're considered a thief. That is called thievery. So the question is, do we mean it as that you're a thief, or is it considered you have the responsibilities of a thief? So let's look at the Maharil. The Maharil says something very interesting. The Maharil, who lived in the 1300s, he says, one who borrows without permission is called a thief. This means that he takes on the halachic status of a thief, insofar as he is now responsible for anything that happens to the item. This does not mean that he violates the prohibition of do not steal. Rather, it is entirely permitted to do so, i.e. to borrow without permission, so long as one intends to take on full responsibility for this item. So very strong, interesting perspective that the Maharil says, if you need to borrow someone else's property without their permission, you take on their responsibilities. It does not make you a thief. Okay? The Sama, the Me'iras Einai, writes that one who borrows without permission is called a thief, and this means that it is prohibited, a prohibited act, included in the biblical prohibition of stealing. So he's pulling out that there is an argument between the two. So exceptions to the case, and that is what we spoke about earlier with regards to doing a mitzvah. If you're doing a mitzvah, everyone pretty much agrees that you're allowed to do you're allowed to do a mitzvah with someone else's property without their permission. Exception number two, if people generally do not mind when this item is borrowed. I'm going to see this. So this is the quote in the Talmud in Psachim, and it's really talking about someone using someone else's property and using something for a mitzvah, that we're okay to use someone else's property for a mitzvah. Okay. Now, what about if someone does not mind you using their property. Does that initiate the permission? If I don't mind people using my, give me an example where we know that people don't mind using other people using their stuff. What kind of stuff do people generally not mind other people using? Would you all agree that a pen? I show up at a bank or forget a bank. Why I was at a store today and someone needed a pen, so I grabbed the pen and gave them. We don't mind if you use my pen. I don't mind unless you obviously talking about a fancy pen that could get damaged. We're not talking about that. But generally,
Or a
people
book.
don't mind to use a pen, something simple, right? So do I have to get permission every time someone wants to use a pen? It seems not. Okay.
What about
So
a book? A book?
A book,
Oh,
correct?
Yeah.
A book, yeah. You're saying that people usually don't mind if you use a book? Len is shaking his head. Len is very careful.
I love my books. I don't want other people's fingerprints on my books.
Len,
My
eh?
sparring. Sorry.
OCD, Len. I know some good.
Oh,
Even my
sorry.
pens. I have issue with my pens.
And your pens. I like my pens as well. That's the truth. I
How
be honest.
about, Rabbi?
Oh my gosh,
How about Wi-Fi?
that's where we're getting at.
How
That's
about a snow blower?
what?
Snow blower.
The snow blower. How about a shovel?
Yeah.
Your snow shovel. Neighbor leaves it out. Can you use it? There's no damage that's going to happen. You most likely no extra damage is going to happen. Are you allowed to? Are you able to use it? Usually, if we know that someone is not particular about it, you're allowed to use it without their permission. Now, clearly, if Len were in yeshiva, in all of his books, they would say, "Do not use without permission."
Not touch. Except to return if lost.
Yeah, do not use it, do not, you put it in, right? We'd write it specifically. So what that means is that specifically Len's books are not to be used without his permission. However, everyone else, unless you write that, we expect you to be able to use that without someone else's permission, whether it be something for a mitzvah or even without a mitzvah. Something else, as long as we know that it's not, that a person does not mind. So I want to argue that a person would clearly express that this is that they do not want to allow someone else to use their property by their internet, their Wi-Fi. They would put a lock on it. I think that nowadays it is simple enough to say that it is almost, I would argue from the perspective of you drive around and one clearly sees that the only internet access points that are not password protected are internet password points that are made for public, right? You don't find internet houses nowadays that have in their Wi-Fi unlocked. So I would say nowadays that this is clearly an indication. If someone has their password that is unlocked, they're clearly giving access to that public. The question is, what about passwords that are easily available to you? And this is where we kind of we talk about the dentist, in that they used to have a sign right up front, internet password, whatever that internet password is. So one could argue that on the one hand, the reason why they have the internet password is only that it's only for clients. One could also argue that the only reason why they have internet password is for security reasons. And that's why they have the internet password, and they're open to anyone to use it because it's very much available. That is the gray area that we could throw out. what we want to do next is we want to talk about something. We want to try and define what the internet is per se. If I give someone access to my Wi-Fi, what does that mean? What is the Wi-Fi, right? We spoke a little bit about field that clearly, let's just talk halachic. From a halachic perspective, if you have a path through your field and it's a public thoroughfare, people walk through the field, I'm allowed to use that shortcut. Speaking to Evelyn, right? If usually people walk through that, one's allowed to use that as a shortcut. The person who owns the field needs to clearly express, if there is a path through it, the person needs to express, please do not use my field. However, if there's no path, then you have no right to walk through the field. Does that make sense? If there's no path and there's no access point, so it's clearly that I'm not allowing anyone to walk through my field. If there is a path and I haven't blocked it, I haven't put a sign, so then what I'm expressing is I'm giving everyone access, ability to walk through my field. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the internet. The internet. So the path is much more of a simple, tangible expression. The internet is a bit less of a tangible expression, something much less tangible than a path. Let's say I have. I'll give you such a classical example. I hire for my I bring in the superstar for my wedding, for my daughter's wedding. God willing, should be sometime soon. I don't know when, but amen. I don't know when. Anyway, let's say one gets a superstar and flies him in for Nissim Black, bring him in from Israel, $10,000. And we have the wedding. We have an outdoor wedding because of COVID, and we're celebrating the wedding outside. Now, a whole bunch of guys, they say, oh, Nissim Black is around, and they all start showing up outside the wedding hall. Outside my private property, they're all lining up to watch Nissim Black. Do they have a right to do that? They're all on public property. They all come up. You've got 100 people come and show up on public property. Are they allowed to do that? Carol is nodding her head. Would you all agree that you are allowed to go in this? Yeah? Even though it's clearly it's a private property. It's my property. I own it. I brought this person. I've hired him. Why is it that you can all come and listen?
Well, if it's a hotel, it's not really yours.
Let's say,
Did you say in your home, in your backyard?
let's say I did it in my backyard. Fantastic. Did it in my
Well,
backyard.
how can you stop them?
So a whole bunch of people come in and hang out at the parking lot of Mariah. Okay. So are they allowed to do it? Absolutely, they're allowed to do it. Number one, it's not so much from the perspective of you can't stop it, but from the perspective of it's not something that's tangible that I can say you're not allowed to do this. You can't go and say, let's say one goes and plants a beautiful flower bed in front of one's house and everyone comes past and looks at the flower bed and enjoys it. You can't say, whenever you walk past my house, block your eyes. I don't want you to look at my flower bed. You can't block, there's beauty, there's sound, there's smell. You don't have control or ownership. One can't say, I have control or ownership over sound that is available out there, over beauty that is available, over smell that is available. You don't have really, there's no such thing as absolute ownership over that. And the argument over here is kind of from that perspective of wanting to argue and say that the Wi-Fi it's out there. It's your access point that anyone who's out there has access to. So who's to say that you can go and control that, or say that you're not allowed to? Or if I go and use it, who's to say that I'm stealing? Yeah, Adrian.
Well, you couldn't pick the flowers and take them home with you, though.
Correct.
I-
Correct.
You can only admire them in the space that you planted them.
Correct.
So it's limited.
He needs to speak up. He needs to show his face if he's shouting in the background. Is he shouting in the background?
He is. Yes, but doing another class, so.
Oh, he's doing another class. Oh, I got it. I see my popularity. Okay, I'm just looking at reading Evelyn's message. Does the
No,
person knowing
you're the new guy, Gadi.
I'm the new guy. Yeah, I understand. That's okay. So Evelyn, just to answer your first question, does the person who knowingly loans his talus get the benefits of performing a mitzvah? The answer is absolutely yes. He does. It kind of shares the mitzvah. I get a privilege. I get kind of partial credit if someone else does a mitzvah with my property. And it seems that the internet may fall under exception number 2, particularly when there is no password. Okay, great. So let's look at a very, very interesting Gemara. The Gemara talks about using a stolen shofar, and do you fulfill the mitzvah of shofar by using a stolen shofar? What do you guys think? Let's start with something simpler. If someone steals a lulav, okay, does one fulfill the mitzvah with a stolen lulav and shakes the lulav? Do you fulfill the mitzvah with a stolen lulav?
So should we answer out loud or? Okay. So for an example, the sources that you brought up, you didn't actually proceed and let us know what exactly was determined as far as the terms of theft was concerned. So if the terms of theft was taken to mean your level of responsibility versus theft in terms of, but also both of these situations, these examples that you brought up, they're all connected to a mitzvah. So it doesn't even really apply to that because they're all mitzvah related.
Right. So now, but were you talking about a lulav?
Like for an example, the lulav or the shofar, if you, quote unquote, steal one of these items,
Right.
it's like, so the first exception comes to mind because the first exception deals with somebody stealing something for the purpose of doing the mitzvah. So there's that exception. So like,
now,
I don't understand.
I want to be very clear that stealing a lulav, what he's doing is he's not borrowing, and he's not borrowing without permission. He has no intention of returning it.
Oh, okay. So that wasn't necessarily, so that wasn't clear because we used the term stealing before, even when somebody was borrowing something, right? Borrowing without the owner knowing about it. So
Correct.
here
Borrowing
you're talking about
borrowing without the owner knowing about it means that he intends to return it back to the owner. Okay.
Right. So,
over here, it's completely stolen. No intention of returning it back to the owner. Okay. So now the question is, can one fulfill the mitzvah of a lulav with a stolen lulav? And the answer is very, very clear. Absolutely not. You can't do a mitzvah through an avera. Okay. One does not fulfill a mitzvah through a sin. So if one stole a lulav, one does not fulfill, and then goes and makes a blessing over it and shakes it, one does not fulfill that mitzvah. Now, with regards to a shofar, a stolen shofar, the halacha is very different. And let's just look at the source. Here we go. look in the gray box. This is the Rambam, Maimonides. If one blows a stolen shofar, one has fulfilled his obligation, as the mitzvah is only to hear the shofar, and sound cannot be stolen. It's very, very interesting halachic perspective. I read the Hebrew. Shofar agazel shetaka bo yotze she'ein mitzvah ela b'shmi'ah takol. The mitzvah is only to hear the sound of the shofar. Afal pi shelo naga bo v'lo yigbi'a hashomer yatza. Even if be'ein b'kol din gezel, there's no sound. With regards to sound, there's no ruling with regards to ownership over sound. Now, I mean, like the truth is, we can go with this and go into other challenges or halachic questions with regards to intellectual property. But let's stick with this a little bit. And the Gemara, here's the source, another source, which is beautiful. Rav Papa said, Kol umare, a voice, sound, and sight. Ein behem mishum me'ila, one does not have the prohibition of me'ila against deriving benefit from something that is specifically dedicated for holy purposes, since sound and sight do not have substance. Ein behem mamash. So I want you to take note of these specific words, do not have substance. These are very, very important words that are going to give us, are going to perhaps give us a path to open up this concept. So let's just explain what Me'ila is. Me'ila is that if a person dedicates something to the temple, you dedicate something to the base of Mikdash, you're not allowed to have benefit from it. It's not allowed to have personal benefit from it. Now the question is, you got something that's very beautiful, can you benefit from the beauty or can you benefit from the smell? The answer is yes, you can, because that's not considered actual benefit. It's not, there's no substance with regards to sight, and there's no substance with regards to smell, and there's no substance with regards to hearing, okay, with the voice, with regards to sound. So can we pull that across and pull that and say, can the internet, can Wi-Fi be considered something that has no substance, and it's something out there that you don't necessarily have, it does not have actual substance, right? What is Wi-Fi at the end of the day? Is it numbers? Come on, Adrian. Yeah.
Well, but you can produce something with Wi-Fi. You can construct something. You can make something happen with sight, smell, and hearing. You can't really capture it and use it for something concrete.
Do you know how much? What's the perfume industry's value? They capture it and they sell it. Yeah.
But doesn't the Wi-Fi allow you access to information and something that you can benefit from? So you are getting a benefit. It's not ethereal. It's not like smell or sound. It's more substantial, isn't it?
Is it? I would say that smell and sound is very substantial.
I would also, given that you yourself right now use the term substantial, indicating that it does have substance. So I'm having
Right.
a lot of difficulty with the term substance. You think of the term a man of substance. What does that mean? That's not physical. The term substance in a man of substance is so much more, quote unquote, substantial than some sort of physical entity that you can pick up. So I don't know if mamash or it really translates to, I mean, the substance is a very tricky term here.
Right. Alyssa?
I wanted to say in your example about the flowers.
Yeah.
If I'm passing by someone's garden, my viewing them does not diminish the value for the homeowner or whatever. So to make perfume, my helping myself to their whatever it is to their substance or their entity or their flowers diminishes their enjoyment of the flowers because now I've stolen them. So it's kind of like one candle can light many others without diminishing the original flame. Part of it, I think, has to do with, does it diminish the benefit, the profit, the everything for the original owner who paid for it? It might be one item thing to consider.
Carol?
I wonder if this goes to your earlier statement between a communal experience versus a self-centered experience. I found that to be interesting. The flowers or the internet it's an open experience. And to take a flower for my self-centered purpose, as opposed to the flower being in the garden for communal joy to view. The internet might be available under various circumstances, but to take access of it becomes my self-centered experience. I have to have permission. It might be there in the universe as an opportunity or an experience, and then various entities give us permission to use it. Then it becomes a positive communal purpose, not just I'm stealing it or taking it or using it only for myself, but I have permission, which becomes respectful.
Right.
I think it also has to do with the intention of the one who owns it. If I plant a garden, I am expecting people to come and enjoy it or think it's pretty. If Starbucks, going back to the original, I said there's an unspoken agreement, but they're using it also as an enticement, like somebody else brought up. Absolutely. As an enticement. Their kavanah or whatever, what's the word I'm looking for? Their intention is for people to enjoy it, but it's not just to be wonderful people. It's because they've got something to sell. So they're allowing people in without boundary in hopes that they will sell what they're trying to sell. So it also intention on behalf of the owner plays some part.
So I love that. I want to direct a couple of things just to clarify or explain a little bit from the perspective of quantification of what mamashut means. Something like that you can't quantify it, that you can't collect it, or for example, sound. Like if I bring in a musician, right? I can't go and say you can't listen to that music. That's beyond my, because I can't block. I can't block it. Or perhaps I could build a soundproof room, but until I've done that, I can't go and say you're not allowed to come and listen. I just can't do that. With regards to the internet, and I'm not losing anything by people being out there to listening to my private concert. With regards to the Wi-Fi, one could argue that we do lose something, because every access point, on average, just so you know, if at some point in time you get too many Alexas and Googles and then phones and computers, at some point in time, your access point is not going to be able to handle that amount of
throughput.
Machineries that are using that wave, right? So every computer or every machine that uses an access point, it blocks up a certain access point. I want to ask with regards to, we all agree that if I walk into Starbucks and I order a coffee, they clearly have no problem with me using their Wi-Fi, We all agree with that. Okay. Now, what if every morning I show up and buy a coffee and spend there the entire day from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. and that has become my new office? Am I able to do that? Carol, what do you say? You think you are? I mean, it's clearly, definitely with regards to the start, I'll tell you where they struggle with this issue. They cannot do anything about it, that's for sure. They're stuck. This is definitely a major issue with Starbucks that are in the vicinities of high schools and universities. Starbucks that are close to those, they definitely have major challenges with this issue in that students will come in and just sit for hours and hours and hours on end. And they may buy a coffee. And that is another question. How, is there a limit to how much time you are that they are okay with you using, and beyond that they're not?
But they can decide that. Starbucks can decide that. Starbucks can decide how many hours you're allowed to sit there, and they don't do that, but they could.
Yeah, Adrian?
I think they view it as an investment.
Yeah.
Because you never know when it's going to pay off.
Yeah.
Either by people walking in and seeing him there and thinking, oh, just get my coffee and sit down and do whatever. Or at some point, he's going to be able to buy the coffee or will buy the coffee. So I think it's an investment in the future.
See, Adrian, I like your opinion, but you've never been to those Starbucks on university campuses where you have a meeting and there's nowhere to sit. It's extremely frustrating. There's nowhere to sit because you got students sitting there from morning to night. And that's very frustrating for new clients, and it's very frustrating to the staff who want to give access to to new clientele, and they realize new clientele are not able to come in because there's nowhere to sit. So they could lose business by offering unlimited free Wi-Fi. It is a challenge. I'm not going to say it, but the real question is, with regards to a halachic perspective, are you allowed to do that, or are you not allowed? It definitely seems that one is, and Starbucks are really at a bit of a pickle. It's really a problem that they have to deal with. It's not necessarily an issue from stealing. I want to go through and talk about one more thing. It's called Ze Nehene V'Ze Lo Chaser, which means that, hold on a second, what's up? It's Shabbos, right? There you go. Sure. Okay. Shalom needs to take a bath. All of you need to take showers. Okay. Mom's not home. Sounds pretty calm, right? Tell you. You know what's been working in a phenomenal way? We have it's called the 39 clues. Okay, I gotta switch it off actually. Actually, I'm just gonna leave it on. Audiobooks on Spotify. Okay, so this person is benefiting, and this person does not lack anything. And the quote is really from a quote in the Talmud, where if someone uses someone else's property that is available, and he was not going to rent it out to anyone else, can one use that property? Hold on a second, let's find the quote. Here we go. The Rambam right over here in the laws of Gezela Va'aveda, which is the laws of stolen property. If someone dwells in another person's courtyard without them telling, okay? If it is a courtyard that is not regularly rented out for money, the squatter is exempt from paying the owner. This is true even though the squatter would have otherwise had to pay money to rent out somewhere else to stay for the night, since this is a case of Ze Nehene V'Ze Lo Chaser. So we're not talking about a home, we're talking about a courtyard. And courtyard is kind of a a common space between in a court, right? Like you have a number of houses around the sides, and you've got a common space in the middle. So this one benefits and this one does not lose. The squatter benefits from having a place to stay, and the owner does not lose by anything by having the squatter camp out on his property. Now, these are very loose words because the word squatter now has a very, very negative connotation. But if the courtyard was a type that is regularly rented out, even if this particular owner does not regularly rent it out, then the squatter is obligated to pay as he caused the owner a loss. Meaning, it's how do things work with regards to these things? Do people usually pay for them, or do people not pay for them? Here's the here. So the Rambam rules that if a person dwells in another person's property without telling them, he does not need to pay the owner so long as the property is not the type that is usually rented out. For example, if someone were to discover a man camping out in his backyard shed, he would not be able to force that man to pay rent for the nights that he spent in his backyard, as backyard sheds are not usually rented out. However, you can tell the person that he's not allowed to be there anymore. Similarly, if a Wi-Fi network is set up in a private home where the owner pays a set fee for unlimited usage, one could argue that a passing traveler who has access to that person's Wi-Fi will be exempt from paying so long as his usage did not negatively impact the homeowner in any way. Of course, using a neighbor's wireless connection often slows down the connection speed and thus will often usually adversely affect the connection's owner. However, if the owner is not simultaneously using the network, such as if he is away traveling, perhaps there is grounds to permit using this Wi-Fi, since doing so does not negatively affect him in any way. It should thus be permitted based on the aforementioned principle of Zen Nehene V'Zeh Lo Chaser. Okay. Problem with the argument is that this contention, however, makes a big assumption that assumes that just because a person is exempt from paying after the fact, that means that one is allowed to take advantage from the start. Are you stealing when just because halachically you're not obligated to pay rent, does that mean that what one is doing is permitted? And this is what our quote over here is. Amar Rabba, Rabba said, "Kugom zeh kufin al midat stom." In cases like this, where one party stands to gain and the other does not stand to lose anything, we compel people to not act unkindly like the people of Sodom. Sodom was destroyed in biblical times for its inhabitants' cruelty towards another. And I would like go from the perspective, and where did Carol go? We lost her? Sorry. So I want to go from the perspective of back to Evelyn's original perspective, from the perspective of like, is one meant to be a self-centered individual, or is one meant to be, does the Torah expect you to be a self-centered individual, or does the Torah expect us to be giving individuals, communal-minded individuals? Do we see you as a person of rights, or do we see you as a person with regards to responsibilities? Do I have responsibilities toward the community, or do I have rights about everything? Everything is mine, and you don't have any rights until I give you permission. Everything else is not permitted, and that's where the Gemara says that we kofin al midat stom. We do not allow people to act cruel. We're particular about actions of cruelty, of self-centeredness. It's like I don't want anyone to have. I remember I was a kid, and one of my friends had a really nice Parker pen, and it started to leak. And he like a Parker pen when I was in second grade or third grade. His father drove a Porsche, and it was the only Porsche I ever saw till I was 15. Right, so they did relatively well. He had a Parker pen, and his Parker pen started to leak, and he took the Parker pen and threw it in the garbage. And I'm like, park a pen in the garbage. That's so cool. A park a pen. I can play with it. I can fix it. I can clean it up. I can do something with it. I'm sure. Park a pen. So I took it, and he saw that I took it out of the garbage. He took it back from me, and he got very upset. Took it back from me, and he put it back in the garbage. That what I would call is called, you're not allowed to have any benefit. I'm not allowing you to enjoy anything that is mentally that is mine. I'm not giving you that permission. I'm not giving any. You're not allowed to benefit from anything out of that comes out of my stuff. Clearly, the Talmud or our Gemara, our sages, are focusing very strongly on this perspective of we want you to encourage the ability of sharing. We want to encourage that concept of sharing. Let's just quickly look at the conclusion, and then we'll call it a night. Throughout the campuses today. Second, how is this different from those ordering coffee, sitting in cafes, people watching as it's popular in areas? I agree. Both balance is definitely important with regards to rights and responsibilities. Sorry, that's not right. Let's try this one. Share screen. Okay. Conclusion. Borrowing without permission is generally considered theft. However, if one has grounds to suspect that the owner of the object would not mind lending it out, for example, if he wants to borrow it for a mitzvah, wants to lend it out for a mitzvah, or if it is an insignificant value that one would care, that no one would care if it is taken, then many halachic authorities permit borrowing it. That said, it would seem that none of the above leniencies apply to Wi-Fi unless the Wi-Fi is being used for a mitzvah. So it's a very interesting perspective that is saying that unless you're using it for a mitzvah, you're not able to, you're not allowed to use the Wi-Fi. So now I have a very interesting question. My question is, I would be using the dentist's Wi-Fi for a Roomba, which is vacuuming the synagogue. That is a mitzvah. But the Wi-Fi is actually owned by someone who's not Jewish. So what happens over there? It's something that I think, Judy, maybe you'll go in and ask them if we can use the Wi-Fi for a Roomba, okay? We'll let you take that on. That said, it would seem that none of the above meanings, okay, the fact that a wireless connection is intangible may warrant treating it more leniently than a regular case of borrowing, though at the same time it would seem that even actions affecting intangible items can be prohibited at times. The principle of Communal midat sadon, we're particular about behaviors of cruelty when applied to case of Zenan of Zelo Chaser, may be used as a basis to permit freeloading on Wi-Fi, but only in cases where the following two conditions are met. Meaning, it is known definitively that the owner will not be negatively affected at all. For example, the owner is away on vacation and hence additional use will not slow down its Wi-Fi. And the owner is not in a position to rent out the Wi-Fi, even if he wanted to do so. So he comes up with this conclusion that in order to be able to use Wi-Fi, he is your dentist. I know that, Judy. Is that Judy, right? Judy's iPhone. And that is the goal. The goal is that if someone is not losing out and would not be able to benefit financially with that intangible concept, then it should be permitted from that perspective. So I know we haven't given a clear halachic guidance from that perspective, but I think what we've definitely done is given us some open spaces with regards to clarifying a bit more of the halachic opinion and discussing it out. Yeah, Adrian.
I think the dentist would benefit from you using the Roomba, because if the Heim Center looks cleaner, it makes people happier to come to their office when they're surrounded by clean rooms.
I like
So
that.
if you want to justify something in your head, go ahead.
Okay, let's.
However,
Yeah.
you might need to only use their Wi-Fi when the dentist's office is not open. So
I
it
know,
doesn't
that-
impact their patients.
That is a good question. I'm trying to think of how does the Roomba use the Wi-Fi? Because the Roomba is set to switch on at random times, like at 2 a.m. That's when the Roomba usually goes and does its thing. So does that mean that it is always connected to the Wi-Fi and it only uses the Wi-Fi when it's switched on? I don't know. I don't think so, actually. But let's just see. Evelyn, you wrote, regarding the students sitting at Starbucks all day, first, universities have free Wi-Fi throughout campuses today. Second, how is this different from those ordering coffee, sitting in cafes, people watching, as is popular in certain areas? What do you mean by that?
Right. Okay. So, sorry, just thoughts I wanted to get down. So, as far as Starbucks at university campuses, there's a prevalence of Wi-Fi throughout campuses. There must be some other draw to the Starbucks, like maybe they have a study group that they congregate over there because it's a central location. There must be some other draw other than the Wi-Fi that are bringing them to there, because Wi-Fi has become so prevalent, which also brings me to another issue or scenario that I wanted to bring up, just in terms of how difficult it is to really come up with some sort of halachic agreement to this, because the technology is changing so quickly.
Agreed.
That even Wi-Fi bandwidth just keeps enlarging.
Exactly.
That your usage of it is infinitesimal compared to your impact to the owner.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I thought I'd bring that up. Oh, and as far as the coffee houses, I mean, okay, before Wi-Fi or before even smartphones, people used to sit in cafe, order one cup of coffee and sit there for the entire day, just watching people. I don't know, this was way back when. So how exactly, is this different? I mean, nobody liked it, especially the waiters and waitresses that all they were to rely on are the tips of one cup of coffee.
Right.
But I don't know. I just thought it was a comparable situation.
Right. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Julian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to ask you, what does Roomba mean? What does that mean, that word?
A Roomba is a robotic vacuum.
A robotic what?
Vacuum cleaner.
Oh, a robotic vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. So it just it gets switched on by the Wi-Fi, and it's a little round on wheels, and it goes around the entire area and it vacuums up the entire carpet. So
Okay.
the area in L'chaim Center is huge, and it'll take a very long time to vacuum that area. So this vacuum just does it by itself.
Okay, thanks.
Alyssa.
I want to say that next Thursday is Lag BaOmer. Are you having class, or what are you thinking?
Okay, so let's just quickly mention that this coming Sunday is a phenomenal class. We are talking, just before we get to next Thursday, I don't think we're going to have, I don't think we're going to have class on Lag BaOmer. This coming Sunday is a medical ethics class. So on Sundays we have medical ethics, and we're going to be talking about plastic surgery from a halachic perspective. I traditionally present with Dr. Didi Schiller. and she's a OBGYN specialist and a surgeon who is between Baltimore and here, and she is a phenomenal friend, very educated, and she will be teaching with me this coming Sunday night. And then after that, we are going to have we will be having a talk about the program and this program for lone soldiers. So the program is going to start from 7 till 8. 7 p.m. we're going to do Jewish medical ethics, and 8 p.m. is going to be this. We're going to have a guest speaker who's coming in from Israel and who represents lone soldiers in Israel. That's
Those of you who haven't been to Gadi and Dee Dee's class, don't miss it. They are phenomenal. Just a plug.
Len doesn't think so. He's like,
Agreed.
Hey, thank you, Susan. Okay. What do we do? Let me just look at the schedule. I think
Good
there's
class
This
tonight.
class was great.
This class was awesome, Rabbi.
I think let me just Untitled barbecue Wednesday night.
What's Wi-Fi, by the way?
Julian, I never heard of a Roomba until it started wandering around my canasta class one day. I
How do you
swear it's true.
How do you spell it?
How do you spell it? R-U? Is it R-U or R-O?
ROOMBA.
Yay.
But that's a brand name.
Yeah, that's a brand.
Right.
That's
It
not the
started wandering
device.
around my
Everyone
canasta
knows
class.
what you're talking about when we say Roomba.
Julian, it started wandering around my class one day and I had no idea how to turn it off.
So sorry. Lag BaOmer concert. I just want to see when is the concert, because there's a concert. I'll take my family. If the concert is on Wednesday night, I would do class on Thursday night. Give me a second. Does anyone know when that is?
I think I do.
Which
I think I do.
concert?
I think I do.
Mordechai Shapiro.
The concert?
Mhm.
Where is it?
In West Rogers.
Yeah, Mordechai on Fire. May 19th. When is that? Is that
That's next Thursday night.
Thursday.
all right?
That's Thursday.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when do we have class next Thursday?
We will not.
We will not.
Yeah.
Join us for the concert.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Rabbi. It was great class. Awesome.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very
Bye,
interesting.
shalom. Hopefully
Thank
we'll
you so
have
much.
Shabbos on
Shalom.
Sunday. Keep on.